We are rolling.
That's what we need. We need that theme song.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Thoughts from the Movies. I am Josh Elsass. Joining me, as always, is Justin Luteran and Austin Rank King Moorhead. Guys, this week we covered The Social Network.
Social Network.
Social Network.
I have some controversial things to tell you guys.
Oh, God.
I didn't think it was that good.
Oh.
Movie of the decade? Not in my book.
Oh, boy.
Not in my book. And
can't.
Justin's totally frozen.
I was so excited.
There he is.
Which one?
Oh, man. You are just lagging like crazy.
God
There
damn
we go.
it.
Here we go. Okay, you're back. Okay. So, yeah, and I hope that you guys can take me to school like we do every week, and I end up liking the movie more after we're done with the conversation than when before, I just started the conversation. You want to hear that in reverse? Ace Ventura is what we should watch next.
It's a good one. It's a classic.
I hope you guys make me understand why this is the best movie of the decade, because I don't want to be that guy, but I just, it was a good movie, but was it the movie of a decade?
Okay. Wow. Interesting. So you were kind of you were just it's fine, but not that great.
I was like, man, I understand why everyone thought Jesse Eisenberg was going to be a great actor. Like that in Zombieland, he's incredible.
Yeah.
I understand how Andrew Garfield got cast as Spider-Man because he was incredible in this movie. Justin Timberlake was Justin Timberlake, but he was so much older than Andrew Garfield and Jesse Eisenberg. It was mind-fucking me. I couldn't get around that as to be believable. Every time I thought the movie was going to be over, it took a turn and not in a good way. There was some stuff that I was just not, I don't know, man. I just wasn't vibing with it.
Man, I am interested in this. I had seen bits and parts of this film, and I went and watched through the whole thing, and it was mind-blowing.
In a good way?
Yes.
In a good way?
Yes.
That's what I want to hear.
Thoroughly enjoyed this film. It's not I would argue maybe the best film of the decade, but it's still great. There were some very interesting parts of this movie that I was like, that really happened? My God. Everything about certain parts of this were just mind-blowing to me.
And I want to be clear, I watched it twice. I really dug my heels in and was like, all right, I'm going to figure this movie out. And I don't know. I was left underwhelmed for being the movie of the decade.
Okay, I'm ready to get into this. This is going to be a fun show.
Yeah. Wow.
So Justin, take it away.
Here's what I'll say about this. And the reason that it was on my list as movies of the decade that I did for you guys, and why I think that it's on a lot of people's list. Not only is it a great film, it's a really well-made movie. Technically, it's David Fincher. It's great performances all around the technical aspects of it and how it's made. It's just a really great film that people love a lot. But I think what takes it to another level is sort of what Facebook became.
He just keeps dying.
Yeah.
When it came out, sort of in its infancy, and it hadn't really evolved into what it would become in terms of what it is today, like this global superpower type of thing almost, right? And the decade of the 2010s was so heavily influenced by social media. So it was kind of foreshadowing what that whole decade would become. And this is, the beginning of it. It's sort of the founding of it, which not only was a great story, but would become such an even bigger thing over the next 10 years, right? So it almost represented that era, that decade in time better than anything else because of the subject matter. I can't believe you did not like this movie for the production-wise, with David Fincher, with all the elements to it. I mean, I'm stunned that you are not more into
I'm
this.
just right now going through a list of 2010s movies that I liked better than this movie. Like, I'm just
Inception.
scrolling through and I'm like, okay, that movie was better. That movie was better. Okay, so ones that are just like coming up off the top of my head. Inception was better, period. Better. And it almost feels like it's trying to be the same thing, where it's like a super smart movie with big actors and yada, yada, yada. Inception was better. Wolf of Wall Street, better. Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, better. The Act of Killing, now that's a documentary, but still, better. The Marriage Story, better. Django Unchained, better. The Babadook, better. Black Panther, better.
Okay.
Black Swan was better. Argo was better. A Quiet Place was better. Looper was better. Like,
Wait, A Quiet Place? What year are you looking at? That was like 10 years later.
2010s.
2010s. I thought you just meant 2010, that one year.
No, it's, you said it was the movie of the decade. 2018,
Yeah.
A Quiet Place is part of that decade. Argo, better. True Grit, better. It's just at me.
You're crazy now. You think all these movies are better than Social Network?
Yes.
I disagree. I think that these are all great movies, but I don't know. I think they're all on the same level, but Social Network just a little bit higher.
All right. Well, educate me, Professor Luteran, because I am at a loss.
Did you get any of the stuff that I had said before about it?
All the stuff you had said before about it? No, I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, well, about why Social Network is the movie of the decade, right? So it's not only a great film with great performances and well made, but it reflects the decade to come in terms of what social media would become and how influential that would be. Because Facebook at the time was still pretty young and only a couple years, into its use. But what social media would become and what Facebook in particular would become over that decade is why it's so influential. It was the film I think that represented the 2010s the best out of all of them. For the subject, and not only was it a great film, but the subject matter, is what takes it to that next level. It just represents that decade as well as, whatever 80s action movie represents that decade, or, what The Godfather or whatever representing the 70s, that's why it's a cut above.
Austin?
I could argue for that. Like I appreciate what you're saying about the aspect of the social media. It's also a great story, man, of how an idea started and a guy literally had everything at the end, but essentially had no one to share it with, right? And we'll get into that more when we talk on the film, because honestly, man, I loved Jesse Eisenberg in this movie, for just to clear this up. But I hated Mark Zuckerberg after this film so much. It's the equivalent of a guy that's too smart for his own good and doesn't realize. I feel like intelligence comes in play here more than emotion for him as a character for this, because we see how he treats the people that, we get the idea going. We get the money in, and we see what happens to those people. Like I said, we'll talk about this further as we get in. But, man, he's a POS in this film, man. I hated it.
Well, what you have to remember about these guys, and maybe it's the reason that I personally and, Austin, our generation connects with them so well, is when this movie came out in 2010, that's the exact age that we were. We were the same age as all these guys. You have to remember what's so crazy about this story is that this entire group of people, these are freshmen and sophomores in college. These were young guys. They're 20 years old. I mean, they're not developed human beings. And, Mark's entire character and his entire arc and all his goals and everything about it is built around the fact that he just wants to become popular and he wants to be well liked, and he just think that'll lead to a better life. That's all he wants. And he says that in the first scene with Rooney Mara. He says he wants to get into a final club because it will lead to a better life. That's his whole motivation. He wants people to know his name. He wants to be notorious. And as a kid, that's not totally not understandable.
Yeah. I hated him after that scene too. I hated it right there. I was like, okay, whatever. This dude's a douche.
So I think what you guys are bringing up is a really important point that is one of the major reasons I don't like this movie. Not don't like is a strong. The reason, one of the bigger problems I had with this movie. As someone who worked in tech and lives for tech, I've listened to a lot of Mark Zuckerberg interviews. I don't think Jesse Eisenberg portrayed a very good Mark Zuckerberg. I think he was a good villain in the movie, and he acted very well in the movie, but that is not an accurate portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg, in my opinion.
Was there anything that came out about Zuckerberg, like the actual Mark Zuckerberg's, like how he took this film or anything? Justin, do you know?
Question.
Josh, anybody?
It's funny, he did go to see it. I mean, there were articles about him sneaking in the back a couple theaters, and he said that he found the movie to be interesting, although not totally accurate.
Right.
So, it wasn't, they weren't going for, I don't think, a specific portrayal. They wanted to sort of dramatize it a little bit to make him, a little bit more dynamic and everything, that happens in movies, that is what it is. But I don't know that they really twisted any of the facts too harshly. I mean, maybe they presented him the way they did because they needed, him to be a little bit more different and interesting and have sort of a villainous quality to him, even though, he's technically the main character and, sort of the anti-hero. So, I mean, Zuckerberg, he didn't come out and say that he hated it or anything, but he said it wasn't completely accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Mark Zuckerberg is flighty, is how I would describe him. Whereas he almost, when he's asked a question, it is like he's not paying attention because you haven't caught his attention. But I wouldn't say that he's ever deliberately mean to people to piss them off. This is almost a Jobs portrayal. Like, he's almost being Steve Jobs of the Facebook instead of being Mark Zuckerberg. Because a lot of the traits he's showing are Jobsian, where he's being an asshole just to be an asshole and yada, yada, yada. A second big problem I have with this movie is exactly what you guys just talked about, is that it's a fictional representation of real life events. I hate those movies. I go to the movies to escape. I go to the movies to watch a movie that is totally outside of real life. Now, it can have pieces of it, right? But movies are supposed to be a form of escapism. And, like, maybe too much of this movie triggered me because it did look exactly like we were in college. And I personally relate to the Zuckerberg character more than I do any of the other characters, where I am a bit of an asshole because I want to get my way because I know I'm right. You both have experienced that, being friends with me as long as you have. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, I just couldn't. Maybe it was so realistic that it took me out of the idea of it being a movie and almost gave me PTSD of college. Which I guess gives it credit for how good it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. Because, I mean, for me, what's cool about it is that it feels like a different world, even though I was at college at the exact same time. But it's like what we were doing in college was not what any of these guys were doing in college, like it's totally a different hemisphere almost. And it's not to say that the movie was not factual. I mean, it was based on a book called The Accidental Billionaires by Ben Mesrick. And the events that are portrayed are largely, events that happened. It's obviously they have to kind of dramatize it a little bit, but that comes with the territory of any adaptation. But the whole thing with the Winklevi and with, Divi Narendra and the people that were involved and sort of, how Facebook started was based on, how it sort of started.
Okay.
But
do you guys think that Erica accepted his friend request at the end?
No.
That was the best part of the movie for me. When he clicked that, I was like, aw, he still just wants to be loved.
Yeah. Well, that's twofold, though, because it's showing that, remember, at the beginning, there are a couple moments where she's like, they're arguing. She's like, you're probably going to be a very successful computer person, but you're going to be totally alone. And then he sees her later when she's with her friends at the wine bar, and she's like, good luck with your video game or whatever. Like, she kind of shrugs it off and dismisses it. And then at the end, when he sees her on Facebook, that's sort of like, she had blown him off and was, not really taking him seriously before or anything. And now she's part of this thing that he created. Like, that was an interesting moment.
Yeah.
But I don't think that she would accept his friend request.
No. Two things I want to point out. I loved how this movie ended with a representation of the beginning, for which you pointed out. There is a scene at the beginning where he's like, you're going to be, like we just said, you're not going to be hated because you're going to be a nerd or a geek or a successful computer person. You're going to be hated because you're an asshole. And then, help me out here, the actress at the end that played on The Lawyers.
Rashida Jones.
Yeah.
She said, you're not an asshole. You're just trying too hard to be. And I feel those connect very, very well in this film. Two, I have recently started like watching a bunch of animes on Hulu and everything. Zuckerberg reminds me so much of L from Death Note. That is ridiculous, man.
Okay.
He's so smart and he doesn't show emotion, but he comes off as a dick. And it's crazy. Even like, I even got that vibe from like, I mean, one wears shoes, one doesn't, but they both wear
fuck you flip-flops.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, like that's crazy.
I wish I understood that reference at all.
It's
but I don't.
he's a kid who's a super cop. He's a super detective who's super intelligent and doesn't interact with people but understands them. Where it's very I take it as a very good portrayal of what they used to call Asperger's. Yeah. Where they understand what empathy and all that is, but they just don't have it.
Right.
Yeah. It was a very crazy because I'm thinking this in the film, and it wasn't until
that's a great point.
He went into the interview wearing the robe and the flops, and I said, "My God, this is L in real life." Like this.
Yeah, because he even says that you should. I deserve some recognition.
Yeah,
which is like that's a great line. I mean, I thought the movie was incredibly well written.
Yeah,
like I do want to say that. Like when Garfield's character shows up at the house in California in the rain, and you're just like, oh, that's good. That's good timing. That's good writing. That's good storytelling, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's Aaron Sorkin. He's one of the best out there, and he's known for
Sorkin, huh?
Okay. He's very rapid fire dialogue. That's why I was trying to prepare you guys. Like, you got to be prepared from the get go because it just like starts and takes off. That opening scene is 10 pages just of dialogue, and then from there, there's so many little things that are slipped in, and it goes so fast that it's easy to miss the little details. The first time you see it.
Yeah.
Sorkin wrote the Steve Jobs biopic as well.
He did, and that also follows a similar pattern where it's not exactly linear. Like, it jumps back and forth between multiple time periods.
Let me ask you guys an interesting question. Sorry, Josh, before you get going. Do you think the amount of rapid-fire dialogue took a lot of people out of this film? Because originally I had to put subtitles on just to make sure that I was getting every bit of dialogue that was going on. Because there's a lot. Like, I know that I don't have the greatest attention span sometimes. So if I look down at my phone for like a second, I'm missing like an entire like piece of information from this film.
Yep.
Do you guys feel that way? I don't know. I'm just spitting off stuff.
I do not, but that's only because I'm a true like traditional movie watcher where it's like I just want to be in a dark room with no sounds for that 2 hours uninterrupted.
Right.
Like I'm not checking my phone. I'm not going to the bathroom. I don't want people talking. But even then, it's easy to miss things when you have a movie like this or like Wolf of Wall Street or these other ones that are just like talk. You can't possibly get it all the first time. And like I've seen it so many times over the past decade where I know it all. But like you guys, like you said, the first time you watch it or the second time you watch it, even it's hard to pick up on all those details. So I think a lot of people would have trouble with that because they're easily distracted. That's not personally how I watch movies, but I think that yes, a lot of people probably don't get the full amount out of it because they don't pick up on it.
And Austin, I think that's just training. you
Yeah,
know,
I
like
mean,
we spent 4 years locking ourselves in these little rooms in the dark. And like, there were even times where like Justin and I would try to watch movies together for film school classes, and we never got the same out of it as when you watch it alone in a dark room where you can pause it where you want, rewind where you want, that kind of thing.
right.
I just want to read off a few more Sorkin things just so people know exactly who he is. He wrote A Few Good Men. Heard of it? West Wing,
Yeah.
Moneyball,
Yeah.
the Steve Jobs documentary, The Newsroom. I mean, he really seems to be a master of crafting true life events into fictional films and TV. So yeah, just want to make sure everybody understands exactly who Sorkin is, because he is a true master of his craft.
He is, and he's a dialogue guy. You know, there's all kinds of different writers. There are people who are good with world creation. There are people who are good with character and story. He specifically is known for his dialogue, and I think it really came about through The West Wing with that show, because it was so quick. All the walk and talks that happen in that show, where there's so much information being relayed so quickly, like that's really what he's known for, is his dialogue, and this is very much fits the mold of all of those, with just how much there is, how quick it moves, and how smart and detailed and intricate it all is. Like that's what astounds me kind of about some of the stuff that he does, is that he tackles so many different subjects, but all of it is so well researched, and he seems so knowledgeable on it about everything. You know, like A Few Good Men is about the intricacies of, you know, military workings and of court martials and all those kinds of things. Moneyball is about baseball statistics and that whole world of sports, and you know, this is computer programming and different web-based, you know, types of intricacies and business and all that stuff. So everything, it's also different, but it's also richly researched and well done, that it's so believable and so incredibly it's part of what adds to the level that Aaron Sorkin's at, which very few people are at.
And I believe 3 Best Picture nominations out of it, right? Few Good Men, Social Network, and Moneyball.
I would think that there would be more than that, but those 3 for sure, at least, yeah. Because he has so many credits that it's hard to remember all of them.
As a writer credit, he only has 15 on IMDb, which is interesting. But
right, but they're all very large things.
Right.
There's like
Charlie Wilson's War.
Mm-hmm.
That was another one that was a nod, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
But, so Justin, dive in, break it down for us. Tell us why this is the greatest movie of all time.
Well, look, it starts and ends with David Fincher, right? I mean, you heard of him? I mean, come on, the guy is one of the best at what he does, and the craft of this movie is fantastic. It's like Austin said, it's a great story. It's actors that are all young, but at the top of their game. I mean, if you look at the cast, you know, Jesse Eisenberg was new. He had done Adventureland and Zombieland, but he was still relatively new on the scene. Andrew Garfield, this is before he did Spider-Man and all his different things. This is before Rooney Mara did Dragon Tattoo. And in fact, this movie got her Dragon Tattoo. The first scene with her and Zuckerberg at the table, that's the scene that got her Dragon Tattoo with David Fincher. Armie Hammer was not really a known person at the time. And so this is just a cast of great young actors who all went on to have really successful careers and all did great work in this movie. And then the production of it is incredible. I mean, the cinematography is beautiful. Jeff Cronenweth, who's constantly worked with David Fincher on a lot of his movies. And the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which actually is my favorite part of the entire movie, is the music, which won Best Original Score. No. Which movie did they win Best Score for? I think it was this one.
I think it was this one.
They did this, and then they did Dragon Tattoo, and then they did Gone Girl, all right in a row. And all are fantastically, beautifully scored movies. They're all so different. I can't remember if it was this or Dragon Tattoo, but in the editing with Kirk Baxter and Angus T. Wall, who were constant David Fincher collaborators. I mean, the whole production of this movie is just professional to the nth degree, and it complements a story that is just really, for most people, not for Josh, but just really interesting and really relevant to everyone's lives, and something that is just cool to dive into. But I mean, Austin, what do you like overall? What about this movie did you really love about it? Because you said you only saw bits and pieces, so this is your first time watching it the whole way through.
Bits and pieces before I watched the whole thing through for the first time. And man, I love how we get that very college aspect of they break up and he immediately goes and starts drinking, and he comes up with the idea just off the Winklevosses and everybody were reading this in the paper, and they said that he did this while he was drunk and got it was like 220,000 hits or something in 2 hours. Like, that's crazy, man. Like, doing that and incorporating, I think, how everybody's part in this film played out, like where he got the idea from, how he screwed over Eduardo, like everything about this, just it feels like we're not like, again, first time I ever saw it, I thought that there were bits like Josh said where it was going to end there, and then they broke another barrier and another barrier of like deception and betrayal and all this stuff. And I think the best line in this whole film, and this might be jumping ahead to a later segment, but the best line in this whole film was when Andrew's Eduardo character is turned around and he said, "You had one friend. You had one friend." And I love
That's a good moment.
I love that, because the whole concept of Facebook is about finding people to connect with and finding friends. And he only had one, and now he doesn't have any. Like, the most successful person at creating a web of friendship, of exploring interests and friends, doesn't have a single friend in this film. Nuts, man.
Yeah, that is a really interesting dynamic.
One of the people that, as you were rattling off the actors, this was also the first movie for Dakota Johnson.
Before she did 50 Shades. Yep.
Right. And I like Dakota Johnson. I know that her career will probably always be chalked up to 50 Shades of Grey, but she does a really good job at being the hot bitch. And that's it's a tough role if you can't do it well. Yeah. Like, what movie were we were bummed out how bad the girl was? Mystic River. Right?
The Marcia Gay Harden. Yeah.
Yeah, like, Dakota Johnson could have killed that role. Also, David Fincher. David Fincher did Seven, Zodiac, Gone Girl, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. But I like, and I'm just figuring this out now, that David Fincher is kind of like Tarantino, but maybe on like a more recognizable scale. So he started as a music video director.
Another one, yeah.
And it just so happens that he did videos for this band called 9 Inch Nails.
Maybe you heard of them.
Maybe that's how he got his score made. And then later would do the Suit and Tie music video for Justin Timberlake.
Mm-hmm. Which is beautifully shot. I mean, if no one's ever seen it, that's black and white.
He also did House of Cards and Mindhunter, which are awesome. Austin, he did a couple of Love, Death, and Robots.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
He's all about diving into the psyche of people, and usually in the darker tones. That's really what his forte is.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I mean, this guy knows how to make stuff that sticks in your craw, for lack, like, as a good phrase, maybe. Like, you're thinking about that maybe like 2 or 3 days later, like, oh, you know what, that is a good thing. Oh, that was cool, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So he just does great character movies, which are getting rarer and rarer. Like, he hasn't done a film in a while. He did wrap the Netflix one that takes place in old Hollywood, but he has done pretty much, like, Mindhunter has been his recent stuff on Netflix, and Gone Girl, I think, was his last movie in 2014, but he's always just made character movies that have commercial success but are also just so unique, and they stay with you, whether it's Seven or Benjamin Button. Like, they're unique stories, and they're just, like, they're powerful, they're so well done, they just stick in your brain, like you said.
And they're parodied a lot, which I think is even more of a credit Like Weird Al used to say that if your song was any good, I would have parodied it, right?
Did he really say that?
Oh yeah.
That's a baller thing to say.
Right?
Damn.
But like a lot of these are parodied. Like that's what's amazing about it. Like how many times has Panic Room been referenced on like The Simpsons or Family Guy, right? Or like any of his movies, like Zodiac, Benjamin Button, like all of these are in the zeitgeist of pop culture now. And so for like that's Spielberg-esque. Like that's the only other person you could compare that to, where his movie immediately becomes a piece of pop culture zeitgeist. And that's very cool.
Yeah, he's a guy where when you say a David Fincher movie, you know what you're talking about. You know, it's like there's those guys that have a brand, where Michael Bay or Tarantino or whoever, but when you say their name, you immediately think of their movies and you know exactly what the person's talking about. And that's David Fincher for sure.
Right.
But Josh, go through the plot of the movie. I mean, you liked it, but you weren't that into it. I mean, what's as you were going through the movie, what parts did you like the most and what parts were you kind of removed by?
So I love the opening, not the opening scene, but the opening act is a better way to put it, right? I like the first act a lot. I like when he's in college. I like when he's in the dorm room. I resonated with that. Like, you know, we used to spend all night making stupid little videos in our dorm room, right? And then like we would show them and occasionally they would blow up, right? And occasionally they wouldn't. So everything in college for me was awesome. And I liked it juxtaposed with the hearings. I don't know that I ever needed to get past to where they go to California and to where they create the Facebook offices. For me, that it was too much of a jump in time. And I understand that maybe it realistically wasn't a jump in time and it did happen that fast. But for my life reference, they're too many years apart for my own personal timeline. And because the characters aren't aging and they're still kind of in college, but they're not in college. Like we make this joke about Riverdale all the time, which I know these are not on the same plane, but like, we're like, these kids are supposed to be in high school. Like they're all failing. Like none of them are in class. Like this is not going to end well. And like so much of it was taking place outside of the classroom in the second half of the movie that like, I didn't get it anymore. Like when he like gets the note and he leaves the room, right? That's a great scene, right? Or when he's in the computer lab working on something, the guy comes up and then he adds the relationship status thing. Like that all to me was awesome. I loved that part of the movie. I was super engaged. And then when Justin Timberlake's character shows up, I'm kind of like, eh.
So you didn't like that character or you just didn't like where the movie went?
I didn't like the character and I didn't like where the movie went. I didn't like I didn't like the guy showing up to break up the best friends taking over the world. I didn't like now Justin Timberlake has a very special place in Justin Luteran in mine's heart.
He does. Always will.
I want to make sure that I'm not putting down Justin Timberlake. JT, I love you. You can do no wrong. However, he did not win me over. Like I thought he was fine acting, but I did not think like, oh my God, this was amazing. Like you sent the GIF, I'm looking at it right now in the chat of him like sipping the cup and doing like the eye to eye thing.
Yeah.
It's too over the top. It's him being a character in a movie with two actors who are embodying a character and not necessarily acting. Right? Because we've learned now that Jesse Eisenberg is really good at being that cocky asshole and really has, in real life, transcended that's who he is, right? James Garfield's a sweetheart and is almost to his downfall because he can only play the sweetheart, right? So there's just too much. Those two are too much not acting. Oh, we lost him. Oh,
now he's back.
He's back. All right.
Yeah, keep going.
Those two are too much of those two feel too authentic to me. So when Justin Timberlake's introduced, I'm like, oh, here's somebody acting. And it could be the age difference, because the age difference, I do believe, between them was significant.
Well, okay, so I get the age difference thing, but I kind of see that
Maybe
everything's
not.
going decently well in this film, and like Andrew Garfield's character Eduardo says, he reminds him of a wild card, and that's exactly what he is in this film. He's there to spark everything up and see where it can go to his own benefit. And that's kind of where I feel that his character is. I don't think he's necessarily trying to be something that's, you know, you get that sort of like feeling with you do with Eisenberg and Garfield. I think he's there to show you the eventual imploding of everything. Like he's the last candle that you blow off the birthday cake before the cake's gone, right?
And I'm mistaken. Justin Timberlake is actually right around that age. Actually, he's just only like 2 years older than the other two. But maybe it's because I've known Timberlake for so long, and those two look like fresh meat baby face. I don't know. It just felt weird.
Right. I think that also is part of the character, though. I mean, Sean Parker is supposed to be the guy who'd already been there and done that with Napster and everything, and Jesse Eisenberg or Eduardo and Zuckerberg were sort of these new blue-eyed, unsuspecting kids with this thing that they had no idea what it was and what it could be, and Sean Parker did, right?
Oh, Sean Parker's like a creepy amount older than them.
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be older than them.
Oh, 5 years, not that bad, but yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
But old enough that, like, if you're in college, that seems like the person that has been there and done that, right?
Right.
And so, wait, Austin, so you like the character, right, of Sean Parker?
Okay, so I thought, again, that he was a POS in this film, and maybe that's just how I'm perceiving the characters of this film to be. But I think I like the dynamic of him being in this film, because you see everything that transpires when now suddenly that Andrew Garfield's Eduardo has been there for Zuckerberg for so long. Now we get a new player in the game that can promise all the things that Zuckerberg has wanted. He's wanted popularity, he's wanted fame, he's wanted everything. Here's the guy that can do it, and now it's between a rock and a hard place of choosing who to go with. And we see that very well when he comes back in the scene in California in the rain, right? Because you get that very aspect of tension between these characters, between Garfield's character and Timberlake's character. And it eventually spirals into when he goes for the party, but we all know he wasn't going there for the party scene. And the ending scene of that, where he takes the check, like, I was like, if you didn't punch him then, and he went to do it, and then, the line where it's like, I love standing next to you, you make me so tough. Like, it's crazy. And then the eventual party scene, which there's a lot of, like, I don't know if it came out who actually made the call or not, but you gotta think it might have been Zuckerberg, man. You gotta think.
Maybe he planted the story about the chicken, so
yeah,
who knows? I gotta say though, I love the Sean Parker character, only because he has so many dynamic moments throughout the movie that it's just like he's magnetic, and not necessarily always in a good way, right? But like, think about the first time they all meet at the restaurant, right? He's showboating, he's taking over, he's doing his thing, and then he contributes. He has that moment at the end where he says, "Drop the."
Yep.
Just Facebook, right? That's such a big, powerful, impactful moment, And then if you think about, all the things that he does later in the film and how he sort of takes over and grows the company and everything. What's really interesting is that Sean Parker is still involved in Facebook. He still owns his 7%, and Eduardo and the Winklevi, those guys are not involved. So the movie makes him seem like kind of a piece of shit, but he is actually still involved in the company, right? Or if you think the scene in the club where he's telling Jesse Eisenberg the story about the guy who founded Victoria's Secret, like that's such a great moment of like, this is what this guy did and how he did it wrong. And he crashed out instead of waiting to see what it become, let's wait to see what this could become, and like he says, $1 million isn't cool. It's cool, $1 billion. Like he's just got so many great moments in the movie is that I can't help but love that character specifically, even though he's not necessarily a good guy. But what is so cool about this movie is all of the different characters' conflicts with each other, and all of it's happening, like all these relationships are deteriorating as Facebook is taking off and becoming what it's going to become, right? So it's like 50,000 people, 100,000 people, 1 million people. It's just rising and rising and rising meteorically as all of these relationships are just crashing and burning. So I think that's such a cool dynamic to see. I mean, the movie's about the characters and how they all go from friends to enemies, right? That's sort of the heart of the story. But it's also, while that is all failing, it's while set against the backdrop of this company going on to become the most widely known thing in the world. Like that's such a cool dynamic to me to see those both happen together, right? So Sean Parker taking Mark away from Eduardo, and Mark and Eduardo not becoming friends and suing each other, and his relationship with women not working out, and the Winklevis starting off as friends, and then that deteriorates, and Divya and Narendra and all the supporting characters, like all the character dynamics are so interesting in this movie, and I think that's part of why it works so well, because everyone is interesting. It's like maybe you're not rooting for everyone, but you understand everyone's point of view, and just to see how they all interact with each other is like constantly shifting and changing, and it's very interesting.
I think to that point, one of my favorite character twists is Rashida Jones, because the entire movie it just kind of feels like she's like coming on to him, like she's like, oh, I feel bad for him, like that kind of thing, and then she like turns around and drives the knife into him and tells him to settle. Like that's a cool moment where you find out that actually that was her whole thing, was to get close to him, to get him to settle, so that they would lose all their money, right? Like the lawyers on Facebook are like, you need to get him to settle because we're gonna get cleaned if we don't. And that was like a really interesting little twist in the movie that like to your point, like the relationships are all like pulling apart, and that is the only relationship in the movie where they're kind of coming together, and then she him anyway, right? She like blows him off anyway. It's kind of an interesting little juxtaposition there, I guess. I've used juxtaposition like 17 times. I'm sorry.
No, but that's a part of the movie. You're right. And to add on to that, I think just to wrap up what I was saying, and to use your thing as an example, all the characters in this movie, no matter how small, have something interesting at some point to do. Yes. Everyone has a cool scene or a good line or a good moment. Even if it's like Brenda Song, who's like the groupie, the first groupie, she says, Facebook me for the first time. And like, that's a powerful moment, like they're all these small characters, whether it's Dakota Johnson or Divya, like everyone has at least one decent, cool moment. Like think about the lawyers, like the one lawyer is involved in the scene where he's like, do you think I deserve your attention? Do I have your attention? And that ends up becoming like the best scene in the movie, right? And he's a part of that. So it's like everyone they all add something cool or interesting at some point.
I love the lawyer that when Zuckerberg's like darts around a question, and then the lawyer's like, you can answer that one. I love every time that happened in the movie. I was like, that's very cool. And I think that's probably a huge credit to Sorkin and God damn it. My brain is so bad. Oh my God, kids, don't play sports. Concussions are bad. David Fincher. Because all these movies that we've talked about to this point, we've had that character we didn't need, right? It's like, I didn't need that character. We didn't need that person. This one, everyone matters. Everyone has something to say. Everybody counts, including the number of lawyers that are in the room, which is great. It's really great.
Yeah.
What did we think about the end of the movie? So like we got the big blow up scene, which kind of like, we were kind of living back and forth between past and future, right, throughout the movie. And then the last scene, like in the Facebook offices, brings us to present day, basically, where they're in the boardroom discussing, who's getting sued, why, that kind of thing. What's that called? The disposition.
Deposition.
Deposition. Disposition? Deposition. Words
You
are
were close. You're close enough. We'll count it.
What did you guys like the ending of the movie? Did it just kind of leave you feeling like unfulfilled? Did it make you how did it make you feel?
Justin, you could take this one. I'm pondering my thought on it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing that I'll say, I felt like I loved the ending, but it also felt weirdly abrupt. Like
yes.
they're going through, the party and the cocaine and everything, and they're detailing what happened. And then all of a sudden, Rashida Jones is just like wrapping it up. She's like, okay, so what happened to Sean Parker and all those guys? And they're like, oh, he's still on Facebook. And, it's like the final scene. And you're going for this big, in-depth thing with the party and the drugs and all that stuff to automatically and okay, wrap it up. What happened? And so that it felt a little bit abrupt, but I mean, I loved her final scene with Mark, and I loved him reaching out to Erica and all the graphics after that said, what happened. And Mark is the youngest billionaire in the world, as he as he stares at his computer and everything. I thought the ending was great. It just felt like it did a really quick, okay, wrap it up.
Okay, so
go ahead.
I'll counter that, because I feel like the party incident is when everybody decided to jump on the train of, this is in the news now, we need to take this, we need to sue him for everything that we can right now. The only thing I will say, I wish the ending, so this is when all the little credits are rolling and everything while Zuckerberg's refreshing the friend request. I wish they would have maybe, well, now I think about it. Okay, so I wish that they would have kept doing that, but at the same time had a scene where every character is doing what they're doing now, how they're doing now, with those credits with them. Because I have no idea what happened to Sean Parker after that. I have no idea what happened to Eduardo after that. I have no idea what happened to the Winklevosses after that. And maybe that's the point, that they got their shit, we're done with them now kind of thing. But I would have loved to see, I think the only real one that we got of how they did was the Winklevosses when they said they rode in the Olympics and placed 6th in Beijing.
Which cracks me up.
Yeah, but that's it. I didn't get what happened to Sean Parker, what happened after the party incident, what's he doing now, what happened to Eduardo, and the crazy thing is they didn't disclose how much money he got, which means he got so much more money than the rest of those guys. So, I don't
know if it's online. I think it was like $1.5 billion or something. It was a ton, but I don't know if they ever specifically released what his settlement was.
Yeah.
But
I would have loved to see how each character did during this credit scene, because we have no idea what they're doing now. It's all about how Facebook is the center now. And I get it. It's the whole point of the movie, but me just spending a lot of time with these characters in this film, I felt kind of cheated out of not knowing how they turned out,
So he got $2 billion.
There you go.
Okay.
$2 billion with a B dollars.
Yeah, but still though, if you think about it in the grand scheme of what Facebook's worth and what Zuckerberg is worth and those guys that are still shareholders, it's still it's an enormous amount of money, but relative to what it could have been, it's like she says, Rashida Jones tells him to settle because it's going to be a speeding ticket, right? Even though they got $65 million, that's considered a speeding ticket in the grand scheme of what Facebook's worth.
Yeah, $25 billion it said at the end of the thing.
It's now worth $138.3 billion.
Yeah. And Eduardo, at least, he was on the masthead. He was the CFO and one of the founders, and he got pushed out of that. And so, he did settle for an extreme amount of money, but it could have been, imagine what could have been.
I'm glad
Zuckerberg
that,
is worth 70 alone.
I'm very glad that his name was put back on the masthead. So much
Mhm.
so. Like, if that didn't happen, I was gonna get really upset.
Yeah.
Also, let's not cry for Eduardo. He's worth 10.7 now billion. So I think he did okay.
I mean, all those guys ended up okay. I mean, the Winklevi, they're, last I checked, they're really big into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and different. I think they actually might have started their own cryptocurrency, and they're in that world, and they're still, multi-millionaires. And like I said, Sean Parker is still part of Facebook, and Dustin Moskowitz and those guys who were originally part of that team are still own
Right.
their, they own their 60 or 7%. So
Right, but it goes into concern of what they could have been rather than what they have now.
Right.
That's because you talked about, like, Zuckerberg's worth 70 billion, the company's worth $100 billion. 7 for a million, like, I get it, like, that's a huge amount of money, but you could have had this.
Well, Sean Parker's only worth 2.8, which is interesting.
poor guy.
Yeah, I mean, but it is interesting because it almost it backs up the story, right? That he's just kind of a capitalist kind of guy where he jumps in on things at the right time, funnels money and energy into it, and that's how he makes his money. He's not actually somebody who can identify good business decisions, that kind of thing, like Eduardo can, who's worth 10 point, kind of
Maybe,
interesting.
or maybe he just, was cool with getting that Facebook check every month.
Hey man,
maybe
I would be.
Didn't have that ambition. Yeah.
They still aren't cutting the thoughts from the bench checks, Derek.
Hey, listen, the economy is in the shits. What do you want to do?
Hey, we're doing great, man. We're doing great. We're up. Thoughts from the bench is good. Yeah. I don't know. What else did you want to tackle about this movie? Because again, like, as we talk about it like normal, I start to like it more and more. And I do honestly think a lot of this just is borderline PTSD for me, where, like, I had my cool idea in college that got taken away from me. I have, experience with the Sean Parkers of the world where, they pump your tires, and then end up helping you alienate everybody. And like, so, like, I guess maybe more of this is just kind of like me not wanting to relive some bad memories as much as it is anything else. Talk about Fincher as a director. What did he do in this movie that makes it the movie of the decade?
Austin, you want to talk about Fincher first? What you like about him or this movie? Oh, let me ask you this: how familiar are you with his other movies? I feel like he's a guy that a lot of people have seen his work.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a lot of his work, but I couldn't tell you if I could crack down like the stuff that you could do, man. So if you want it, it's all yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what he does in this movie, I think it's just tapping into, when you look at the characters in this movie and what drives each of them and what the focus of the movie is in terms of Mark Zuckerberg, who is this lonely guy who just wants to be known by people, and he's a genius, but he just doesn't have those personal skills, right? But what Fincher does is he makes you sympathize with so many of the characters, right? You sympathize with Mark in terms of just wanting a girl to like you or just wanting to have friends. You sympathize with Eduardo as a guy who could be taking off, but is kind of being held back by his loyalty to a certain person. You sympathize with the Winklevi twins who got screwed over by someone they thought was a friend and have to take a back seat and watch as these things take off. Like, you just are able to sympathize and connect with so many of these people and so many of these circumstances. And I think that's why a lot of people, I mean, again, especially being at this age at that time, like, it was a world that felt like I was part of, but also like so different from the world that we lived in, because our college experience was not Harvard. I mean, it was not creating new jobs and the prestige and all that, the money and all that stuff.
You
it was like,
told me that.
Yeah. But it was just a look at this world that was so not secretive, but in a sense, it's like, it was great to learn all this stuff about Facebook in such an interesting way, right? Because it was something that we had all used for so long and was such a big part of everybody's lives. So to see the actual way it was born and sort of grew was just really interesting, because I don't think anyone knew that story, and the fact that it was so heavily conflicted and there was so many different elements to it, I mean, I think that just added to the gravity of it, right?
Yeah.
But
I will say this, because you said that you feel the sympathy for Zuckerberg for wanting a friend. I don't feel any sympathy for this dude. I'm sorry. I feel sympathy for Eduardo. I feel sympathy for the Winklevoss twins, and I feel sympathy for Erica at the beginning. Those are the only people I really feel sympathy for in this movie. Mark took all these ideas, stole them, and made it his own, and burned every bridge along the way. And in my mind, that's a bed you have to lie in. And I don't feel any sympathy for this guy whatsoever, because he comes off as a jerk, and he tries to make himself, as they pointed out at the end, he's trying to make himself out to be a jerk, instead of having that human empathy and human sympathy that we all have to enjoy human connection. It's like I said at the beginning, the one guy that created the amount of human connection in the world probably doesn't have very many human connections in the real world.
Right. But you don't feel bad for that guy? I mean, he's so lonely, and all he wants to do is have people like him. I mean, I definitely, like, growing up was, like, in high school and college was definitely felt like a little bit of that alienation. But I think what's also interesting about Mark as a character is that you can't just write him off as, like, a money-hungry asshole, because he doesn't care about money at all. He makes a point, like, his clothes are all shitty, which, by the way, were all Mark Zuckerberg's real clothes, the hoodies and the slip-ons and all that stuff, the shorts. I mean, he makes a point, like, he tells the story about how he founded that thing in high school that, like, was the music program that identified things that you would like, and then he uploaded it to the internet for free instead of selling it to Microsoft, right? Like, Mark Zuckerberg, in this movie at least, is not portrayed as a guy who cares about money or who just wants to get rich, like, he's doing this for other reasons. So you have to kind of peel back those layers and say, okay, well, why does he want to create this? Why does he want to be so influential? And it's because that way he will get friends, and he'll get notoriety, and he'll get people to know his name and to like him and to have a life, right? So those are the things that drive him. And I think that's kind of relatable, as things that people want. A lot of people want to be known, or want to be liked, or want to have someone know who they are, or, show an ex-girlfriend that they can be successful or whatever. So, I mean, I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that Mark Zuckerberg is, oh, poor him, but I think there's a dimension to him that just is a little bit on the softer side for me.
So I think to tie it into Robert Morris University, Zuckerberg rather die penniless but with clout, much like the founder, or the namesake of the university. Robert Morris founded the Revolutionary War but actually died a penniless man. That's a fitting end for Zuckerberg, and one that he would be okay with, where he wants to be in every history book ever, but doesn't really care if he gets the money. And you can almost tell that through the philanthropy that he does too. You know what I mean? Where he really doesn't. He's not like Bill Gates. He's not like some of the other billionaires on the planet, like Musk, that are trying to, like, make the world better. He's just doing his thing. I think if we were writing a book on directors, the Sarkin chapter would be titled Empathy Through Tension, where he is so good at making sure that you connect with every character in a movie, because all of them are kind of in a shitty situation, right? Like Benjamin Button, right? He's with the love of his life 7 times or whatever, and he knows that it's going to be over every freaking time. And what's even worse is he watches his loves get older as he gets younger, right? It's a really weird dynamic. Same with Gone Girl, where it's, this running chase kind of movie. I mean, there's really a great deal of tension that he's able to build, and he kind of keeps you at that anxious level the entire way through a movie, where your heart's not really racing, but you're nervous the whole way through a movie. And that's what allows you to connect with these characters so well. Can we talk about the score?
I would love to talk about the score, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I have to say this. We had a class, Austin. We had a sound design class in college, and I don't know, Josh. I don't think we were in this class together, but
Yeah, we
one
were.
of the assignments was to bring in a DVD of a movie that we loved the score on, and like play a clip of the score. And the clip that I brought in as one of my favorite movie scores was this movie, and it was the clip at the very beginning, right after their argument, where Zuckerberg is going from the bar back to his dorm as the titles are rolling. And it's one of my favorite scores of all time because, and I was going to try to play the clip, but it's not going to work out. But if you guys have seen the movie, you know what it is. The score in this movie is so brilliant in capturing the tone of the movie because it's so, the piano of it where it's like, doom, 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 doom. You know, it's very gentle, very soft, but then there's also these tones, this tension underneath it that's sort of just like simmering, and it just captures what the movie is in terms of like, these guys who are just, kids with good intentions, but there's so much anger and there's so much tension and there's all these things pent up simmering underneath the surface. It's just a fantastic, absolutely outstanding score. And it's especially present in the moment at the in the boardroom when him and Eduardo are going back and forth together. And at the beginning, as I said, so yes, I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts on the music are.
So
if you noticed any moments that really stood out.
Here's what I want to say about it is that the show Black Mirror, their latest season, they had an awesome episode with Miley Cyrus called Ashley O. Trent Reznor did all the music for that because not a lot of it is actually Nine Inch Nails music being repurposed. After watching that thing, I was talking with my coworker. I'm like, yeah, I love Nine Inch Nails. And he's like, what is that? I'm like, well, it's Trent Reznor's band. And he's like, you mean the score creator, like the musician like who makes the scores, Trent Reznor? And I'm like, yeah, that guy. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've heard Trent Reznor? Sorry, Tanner. And but I think that tells you just how good Trent Reznor's second career is that he is now a music composer like of John Williams, Danny Elfman-esque levels, not necessarily the guy who made Nine Inch Nails. That was just the part I wanted to get out there. Austin, what do you think of the score?
I will say that it wasn't like something that I really noticed at the in terms of importance, like I was more driven with the character and the story, but the score I did pay attention to, and I have to go back to Justin's analysis of It's an Onion, right? Like you peel back the layer and you start hearing all these like different elements in it with like, like you said, the soft piano, and then almost like a call to the movie. It's a very like subtle throughout. And then suddenly you start having tension and more, and it builds as more as you peel back that onion, right? And it's I don't think a lot of like normal people would notice that, rather as a lot of us like movie goers and like movie extraordinaires. But I would say that it took a while for me now to like, when he started talking about it, I started like, it was like a thought in the back of my head. And I was like, wow, that is interesting. It's a very
you can just YouTube the opening scene of the movie and listen to it, as he's going through campus and the credits are rolling, and you can just understand, like, you hear it, as the tension builds as he gets closer to his dorm. There's just these strings. I don't know if it's a cello or violin, but it's just like underneath, and it just feels like it's tension within the music, and it like foreshadows the whole movie, what it's going to be. It's like, on the surface, it's just these kids trying to find their way, these innocent people, who are just trying to make their way in the world. But underneath, there's this like, really ugly side of it all.
Yeah, and to Trent Reznor's credit, I mean, this is not the first. Well, this might have been the first movie he did, but it certainly was not the last. And actually, he was used as the guy who did the sound in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies. And there's
really?
Yeah. There's a scene with Jamie Foxx's character. He's like the electric guy, and they're battling at Times Square. It's one of my favorite pieces of movie score film history because it's just like Justin was talking about. It's so intense, and all it is a violin. And it would almost be in place in a horror movie, but it's being used in a blockbuster.
Yep.
And I think that's probably a great representation for Trent Reznor. His music should have just been like everybody's secret favorite band, but ended up blowing up into the national phenomenon or international phenomenon of Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
He.
Well, I don't know. Have you guys seen Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl? David Fincher's movies that he did after Social Network.
Yeah.
Because both of those he did the music for,
Right.
And they're just, again, it's so phenomenal, but they're also different, right? Like we talked about, Social Network has the feeling of sort of like simmering tension is how I would describe the score of Social Network, and that represents the movie. And then Gone Girl, or not Gone Girl, the next one was Dragon Tattoo, and that's much more of a sort of like noirish feel. It's a murder mystery type of thing, you know, that has a danger to it and a creepiness to it, like constantly you feel like someone's watching you type of feel. And then Gone Girl is very sort of mysterious and aloof, which that movie also is, with you don't know Rosamund Pike's character, what her intentions are. There's a lot that's hazy about it, and each score just captures the tone of those movies so phenomenally. So if you guys go back and watch this at some point, try to listen for the music, because they're just so unique, but so perfect as an embodiment of the movie.
Do I have Gone Girl mixed up with something else? Is this Affleck? Yeah. Okay. No,
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
I forgot about that movie. I shouldn't forget about that movie. I need to rewatch it because that's a great movie.
It is excellent.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we have anything else?
I think we basically covered a lot in a short amount of time for this film.
Yeah. Well, there's just so much to it. I mean, it's one of the top movies of that year in terms, all the Oscars that it got in the box office.
Absolutely.
It did. It's gone on to become, a very well-liked movie, except for Josh, who hates everything, clearly. And, and especially the actors, the careers that they all went on to do and things like that. It's just there's a lot to unpack to it, which is why I was serious when I suggested, feel free to watch it again, boys, because there's just so much that you can take from it, whether it's the performances or the writing or the other aspects of production or all those different things, or the story itself.
I think
it's a great moment that I love.
What?
Sorry, Josh. What moment that I love is when it's kind of a throwaway, but when the twins go to Oxford and they're rowing in the competition, right? And they place second. It's just such a great moment of they just missed it again. They came in second again. And I love it. It's you won't think about that at first, but it's just
it's like the knife in you and it's being twisted now already. It's crazy.
It's insult to injury. Yeah.
Well, and they probably wouldn't have finished second if they weren't dealing with all of the Zuckerberg stuff, right? Some
people were just the guy that just is always never quite finishes.
Ovechkin.
Oh, burn.
I think what I want to say, and I said it to begin with, and I've after this conversation, I feel like I can double down on this point. The movie was well executed. The director's great, the writer's great, the score was great, the actors were great. They married beautifully. I just don't think, for me, this is a movie of the decade. I don't think this jumps into my top 10 list. I don't even think it's on my top 25 list. Maybe top 50, but not really. I mean, not saying that I'm Rupert and Ebert, but I just don't think that this movie, for me, is it's not Departed.
God.
No movie is.
Somehow I knew that was going to tied in here.
I don't know. It's not. And maybe now I'm looking at Fincher's, shit again, and I like all of these Fincher movies. He was the executive producer on Lords of Dogtown, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I just don't. I don't know, man. It's my least favorite Fincher film. Maybe my
least favorite Fincher film?
Yeah.
Your least favorite of all his movies?
Yes.
Wow.
I
That's
can't
Now
wait to see-
it's been a while since
that's
I've
a hefty accusation.
it's been a while since I've seen Benjamin Button, so I that's probably worse. But doesn't that have Leo in it?
That's Brad Pitt.
Oh, well, yeah, Brad Pitt's okay.
I can't wait to see
it's
the
not
score
Leo.
comparisons for this movie. This is gonna be funny.
I mean, it's a good movie. It's a good movie, but I don't know. Gone
All
Girl
right.
is fucking awesome, and this just wasn't as good as Gone Girl for me.
No, disagree hard on that one. No way would I put Gone Girl above this movie.
You know what? Ooh. And this is really tough because I love Mindhunter. And this just was, to me, like the warm-up to Mindhunter, where it's all just like inner tension relationships as everyone's trying to do a good job. It's kind of an interesting dynamic that he likes to play with. But all right,
Austin, where do you put this in Fincher's repertoire? You have it near the top, or
Yeah, it's near the top. I would say that if we're going by I'm going by like what Josh was like top 10, top 15, top 25. I would say it's in easily my top 15.
Your rankings suck.
Bollocks. But
What was your top Pop-Tart again? That was fucking dog
right,
shit.
just relax.
You don't even know what's in a Tom Collins.
Nah, why don't you just calm down there? But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, guys. Like
it's just so good. It's so good.
Like,
It's so easy to get sucked into it.
Yeah. Oh my! What? All right.
Yeah,
So
I could watch it over and over again.
Yeah,
for
like,
sure.
I watched it twice before we did the show, and I probably, if I didn't have stuff to do today, I'd probably watch it again.
Yeah, it's just very rich. Yeah, there's so much about it that's great.
All right, let's do the questions. What was your favorite thing about the movie?
Favorite thing about the movie, my favorite element of it is the music. Soundtrack, hands down. It's not my, like, is there another question for your favorite scene or your favorite moment?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yep.
Okay. Favorite element of the movie for me is the music.
And
the writing, but yeah.
Yeah, if I had to pick mine, I'd probably say the character development of the story was probably the driving point for this movie for me.
Okay, character development. Yeah, I think this is going to sound so weird because it's the same reason I don't like the movie is the nostalgia aspect. Like it transported me right back to a time where, you know, I could see my dorm room, I could see the people I was living with, I could see like all of that stuff again very clearly. For about a week after my 2 watches of this movie, like it was definitely the front lobes of my brain, and I think that more than like even just like the way he's dressed, right? Those stupid cargo shorts. That was when slides had just first become popular, right? Everyone had those Adidas slides. Like all that kind of stuff was definitely very transportive. If is that a word, Justin? Transportive.
Sure.
It is now.
Let's make it one. Yeah. There you go.
So that's that for me. I think is definitely what it was. The nostalgia. Least favorite thing.
I don't know that I have any least favorite thing with this movie. I mean, we're going to do the ranking or the numbers later, and I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. So I don't know that. Yeah. I don't know that I wouldn't call this a perfect movie, but I can't think of anything that I really dislike, any moments that I just don't like about this movie.
Austin?
I had to say, I've touched on it already, but just how I think everything ended up. I wish I could have known more with how the other characters turned out rather than just Facebook and Zuckerberg. I feel like I could have I wanted something a little bit more, and that may be a little bit greedy for wanting a lot in this movie, but I think they could have done a little bit more with the characters at the end on how they turned out.
I think mine's the ending too. This movie reminds me a lot of Inception. As far as like the way that the story is told and the tension that is throughout the movie. And Inception ends like that, but it gives you that like sense of closure that maybe this doesn't. And so I think a better ending, just like that extra scene, is missing. In so many of these movies we've critiqued, we wanted to take scenes out. This one I needed like one more. So that's cool. Favorite scenes?
So many. I'm just gonna list them off. Start listing them off. The opening scene is outstanding between Mark and Erica Albright. Again, it's 9 pages of dialogue, which you, like most people are taught as a rule, you don't open with something like that. You open with a hook, right? And that's just 2 people talking for 10 minutes. You know, they did 99 takes of that scene, and they purposefully stopped at 99, not to go to 100. But that's how many takes of that scene that they did. And it's just
Why?
I think that, I mean, Fincher's a guy who's known for being so meticulous and just doing dozens and dozens of takes. And I think they just like the idea of not making it to 100, which would have been like pretentious or something. I don't know. But there was a reason why they purposefully got to 99. We're like, okay, we don't want to go 100. That was one of them. You know what? I love this scene, and this is the clip that they used all throughout award season and promotions of that year. But the clip when he's in the one deposition and he's talking to the lawyer who's asking him if he thinks he deserves his attention. And he says, you have the minimum amount. The rest of my attention's back at the offices of Facebook. Did I adequately answer your condescending question? You know, like that was such a powerful fuck you moment, like great writing and great moment. And then another one that I always think of, I love at the end when Eduardo goes, or not, this is kind of in the middle, but towards the end. Eduardo is talking to Mark and he goes, do you remember the algorithm on the window?
Yeah.
And that's such a great moment because I love when movies do this. They put that out there at the beginning where all they're doing is they're creating a website to pick which girl is hotter, right? And they show Eduardo writing on the window the algorithm for it. But it becomes such an important thing. It's like what makes Facebook possible. And when he throws it back to like, do you remember that algorithm that we were just doing for that stupid app? And now it created this empire or whatever. Like, I love that moment when he throws it back. So those are my top.
Mine is along that lines, but it's a different moment. It's when Eduardo is testifying in the Winklevoss twins. Deposition.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good where one. You get the hint that he's fucking the Winklevoss twins out of money by like saying like, nah, I didn't know about them. Nah, I didn't know any of this. And like him, like it's almost like they're a team again because they're exchanging looks, Zuckerberg and Eduardo, the entire way through that scene. And like Eduardo has like that small smirk on the side of his face. He's constantly got his back to the Winklevoss twins. Like it's definitely it's a masterclass in acting because like they don't come right out and ever say that Eduardo knew about it and he's just fucking over the Winklevoss twins because he wants his money, and like Zuckerberg's going along with it because he also hates the Winklevoss twins. But like the actors infer that so beautifully in that scene.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I had to pick, I'm gonna pick 2. And the obvious one, I was gonna say every lawyer like scene in the courtroom and everything, but the one is the one that Justin talked about, where it was, where if he had his full attention or not, that scene immediately. Scene. The other one is when Eduardo realized that his stocks had been taken. It was such a powerful moment that when they went in and he said, oh, he's wired. And I was like, oh, he's wired. And he like picks up the computer and just obliterates it and just right in the face, just tells him everything. That brought so much emotion to a character that was expressing it who had very little emotion throughout the film. And you saw that little glimpse of emotion that he had after that. Mm-hmm. That's how that scene's so powerful for me.
Yeah, that's the full betrayal, the moment of realization. Yeah, it is a great moment. And when he's reading the percentages of how their shares were all reduced, and he's like, it wasn't. And mine was 0.03%. Yep. And then it's just that the score kicks in and it's just like, bow, when you're just like, fuck. this is him getting screwed over. Yeah, good call.
We got favorite character.
All the characters are so good. Like I said, everyone has a purpose and a function and a good moment. Honestly, though, I mean, I'm going back. I think Sean Parker just has so many of like the standout moments to me. I love so many of his lines, and he's just, like Austin said, he's a wild card. So but an impactful one. So he's probably, I think he has the most moments that I liked.
I'm playing off of that. I'm not saying Parker, I'm saying that Eduardo was my favorite character in this movie, because a lot of the tension you could tell throughout this movie was brought out by him in his portrayal of everything that had gone on, whether it was getting, shafted by Parker or screwed over in the end by Zuckerberg, or even the scene where Brenda Song like burns the scarf. Like everything emotionally through this film was portrayed immensely by Andrew Garfield. And yeah, that's my favorite, hands down.
Good call. Josh?
I'm torn. I think Jesse Eisenberg was incredible. Even though I don't feel like that was a good representation of Zuckerberg, he did a great job at playing the character that was written on the page. I loved Andrew Garfield. Justin Timberlake didn't do it for me. And this is going to feel so dumb to say this, and I feel like it's I shouldn't pick this person. I thought Rashida Jones was fucking awesome. It's kind of like there used to be that big stigma that you're a TV actor, right? And I think unfortunately part of Rashida is that she is a great TV actress. She's funny, she's cute, she really does a lot of amazing, memorable roles in television shows. But her twist at the end, and how like her character's like this like puppy dog, like, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you, and then she's like, fucking settle with them right now. And she just turns on a dime like that. Like, that's tough to do, and I think she nailed it.
Yeah.
And in a movie where we had some huge roles and some big performances, her tiny little role stuck out as being very good. So
yeah, and part of that scene that's also great that we didn't talk about is when she's at the end going through everything with Mark, and she's like, let me ask you something. Why weren't you at that party that night? And he's like, what, you think I called the cops? And she's like, doesn't matter. I asked it, and now the jury's thinking it. That was like a great, damn, this chick who's just been sitting in the corner, she actually knows her stuff.
Right.
Although I think you're biased because she was in I Love You, Man, which starred Paul Rudd. So that's the only reason you like her. What do you mean you forgot? How could you forget?
All right. Well, who is one person you would recast?
I don't think I can answer that question, man. Everybody was like, I would say no one. Everyone was really casted very well here.
I wouldn't recast. I think the only person that I would consider, I wouldn't consider it, but I think they could be recast would be Max Minghella, who played Divya Narendra.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think like that character was fine, but I think it could have been someone else. But everyone else just, from Army to Andrew Garfield, and I think all of them, even Dakota, I think everyone was great.
I want to recast Justin Timberlake just to say, like, just to bring up something,
Okay. I swear, if you recast him as a member of Peaky Blinders, I
don't know what you're talking about. I never did.
Tom Hardy would be great. He would be a great Sean Parker.
Is there, and it might have been a little bit too early, but like, what about Jonah Hill? Now, like, body type, he probably wouldn't have fit, but I feel like he's a guy who could handle that kind of a position and a character. I'm just like scrolling through 2010 movies. Like, obviously at this point, it's like the beginning of the new, blockbuster actors. So you have Jonah Hill, you have Jesse Eisenberg, you have Michael Cera. This is also like a really big point in time for like Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Well, you need somebody younger than all those guys. Jonah Hill, I think, would be at least in that age range.
Right.
But I don't know if I can't remember when he started doing drama. I mean, it was probably around that time with Moneyball, and Wolf of Wall Street was 2015, so that was later. Well, that was actually more comedy, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting character. I don't know that I could see Jonah Hill having this sort of gravity that Justin Timberlake has, and I think that's part of him being like a movie, like a global music star. It's like he already feels like when you see him, you already kind of think it's a larger than life person, and so that adds to the Sean Parker mystique.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like searching here, and I'm not seeing anything that, for some reason, like I want Emma Stone in this movie, but I think that's just because I group her in that class with Eisenberg and Jonah Hill and Michael Cera as being like that. You know, when they broke into the scene, they were all very young, and they really took over for a large part of the decade, you know, as the big actors and actresses in that time frame. All right. Overall score.
10.
Austin.
10 out of 10.
We already know what your score is.
Next one.
I'm gonna go with a 9.3.
9.3.
It's my highest grade so far.
So I apologize. I've not written down any of my scores. I plan on going back now that things have settled down a little bit and going and finding all my scores and what I said for everything. This is not better than Goodfellas. And I forget what I gave Goodfellas.
Yeah, I think you gave it a high, like 8.5 or 9 or something. It's pretty high.
I think it was around that.
I think I gave it an 8, and that was the lowest.
Okay. So I think I would like to give this like just an 8.0 straight up, where it's a movie that I would show to somebody who takes film seriously because I would want to see how they react to it. But I don't think it's the movie that I hand to budding young Josh who wants to make movies and television shows for the rest of his life and go, here's your Bible. So yeah, that would have been The Departed.
It always will be. But hey, 8's still pretty good. I thought it was going to be a little lower, so I'll take it.
And again, I liked the movie. I watched it twice and enjoyed myself watching it. I just did not think this is like decade of the movie or the movie of the decade type stuff. That's me.
Fair.
Okay.
Austin.
Yeah.
What are we watching next week?
Evil Dead 2. Number 2.
No.
Army of Darkness.
This will be interesting because this one just came to Netflix recently.
Wait a minute. Can I actually guess?
Sure.
Paranormal Activity.
No.
Damn it. All right.
It's by one of my favorite entertainment companies around lately that has been making films. And if you don't know, that's A24. I love all of their films.
They do a ton of great films.
Wait, what?
They do a ton of great films. They're often smaller character dramas like indies that nobody makes anymore, but A24 does it better than anyone.
Yep.
Is it The Florida Project?
No.
Oof. That's a great movie on Netflix that you should watch, A24. But go ahead.
We're going to do The Killing of the Sacred Deer.
Oh, my God. Yorgos.
Yep.
Yorgos Lanthimos is crazy.
Yep.
Josh, have you seen The Favorite? Or do you know have you seen The Lobster? Do you know any of Yorgos' movies? Yeah. It's crazy. It's a mind fuck for sure.
It was interesting because this movie stars Colin Farrell. And I was like, okay, like that's interesting on its own right, him being in a film like this. But Nicole Kidman's in this film. What else? There's a bunch of...
Josh, this is another like Fincher sort of filmmaker who's like, this movie is like dark, twisted, psyche, really kind of like out there type of thing. Like I haven't seen it. I saw The Lobster and I saw The Favorite, which are the movies he did around Killing of a Sacred Deer. So I have not seen this one, but I kind of know what it's about.
So it's starring Barry G. Burnson and Herb Kalute. No idea who these people are. That's what it says. Those are
You're
the
looking
top.
at Killing of a Sacred Deer? You're looking at the right movie?
Yeah, those are the top listed actors. It says
Colin Farrell would
starring.
be up there.
So it's
And
Colin.
Nicole Kidman.
So it's
And
Colin,
so it's, yeah.
yeah, it's
Okay.
Colin Farrell, Barry Keoghan, if I'm pronouncing that right. Nicole Kidman, Raffi Cassidy, I have no clue how to pronounce these. Alicia Silverstone, and Sunny Sajik. So
Yeah.
those are the main ones that I'm coming up here.
Is this like a better version of The Walrus or that weird Kevin Smith movie?
No.
Tusk.
Oh,
Tusk.
Tusk.
I like
That's
Tusk,
it.
But no, this just to give you guys some things here.
Oh, I have seen The Lobster.
Yeah, this is the movie he did after The Lobster.
Yeah.
Oh, The Lobster is so good.
Yep. I'm just gonna read off 2 awards that it did right now. We'll refresh those when we talk about it next week. But Cannes Film Festival Award for Best Screenplay and Gopo for Best European Film was for this film.
Okay. All right. Well, here we
Yeah,
go.
he's a really interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
So the Killing of the Sacred Deer.
Yeah.
For next week
Here. Yeah.
on Thoughts from the Movies. All right. Well, thanks for watching. We're clicking right along, and we will see you next time.
All righty. Thank you, guys.